Spacemen, gather your children, for Matt has a story. Today on the Manspace. Welcome to the Manspace Podcast. We're your hosts, Doctors Matt Brown and Rob Porter, and clinical therapist Mike Porter. Welcome, Spacemen. It's time for story time from Matt. Just get into it. I feel excited. Maybe you shouldn't get into it yet. Maybe we should shoot the breeze. You guys, honestly, as a side note, I don't know why I say it as a side note. Obviously, it's a side note. I keep having AI generate our content.
I saw that. It's pretty good.
I tweak a lot of it because it will just repeat itself over and over. Or we repeat ourselves over and over. But it's funny how often it will say, like, discuss technical difficulties with internet problems, or it's like, oh. My favorite one that maybe you saw was the one that said, this episode talks about Mike's butt pain.
Oh yeah,
the episode started.
Your seat.
Yeah, because you stood up and Mike goes, Mike's got butt pain. But dude, it is so funny to see this stuff. I'm like, oh man, people really tolerate the crap out of us. Like, what are these guys talking about? It kept saying this one, that I edited it all out, but it was like, discuss the unfair rules of March Madness, discuss the rules of MLS and how it's hard to understand, discuss offsides. And I was like, I don't think we need that much detail for listeners. When do they talk about MLS and offsides? Anyway.
Free MLB TV.
Oh, is that yesterday?
Yeah, but you can download it until I think next Tuesday. So you should.
Wait, is that only through T-Mobile?
Yes, Matt.
And is it stupid MLB TV where it's like, well, if there's a game happening within 200 miles of your location, you can't watch it?
Yeah, you can't watch any Astros games because they're all blacked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, which means I don't think I'm going to be
able
to. Macy gets to go to the Royals home opener tomorrow.
Oh,
nice. Taking her. And she's like, but you got to watch it and try to see me. And I was like, cool. And then I thought, I'm not going to be able to watch it because it's a local game.
Did you say her work is taking her?
Yeah.
Where does she work?
So there's a lady in our ward who works she owns this company called Nickel and Suede. They do earrings and jewelry, I guess.
And heavy metal music. Nickels and Suede. Anyway, go ahead.
They just do stuff like this. Like they set a goal, and if they increase by like 25%, then she'll take the entire, like the warehouse team and I guess Macy's technically on the production team. She's going to take them all to like Cancun for a week.
What?
And then Macy can be got a secret can leak Cancun.
Yeah, and then the marketing team will go to Italy for a week.
Wow.
If they increase revenue by 25%, like across the board.
Yeah.
Whatever it is they sell, I guess.
Yeah.
Jeez, dude.
So I was like, dang. So they're like, they did like when the Chiefs, they did like a big old tailgate party at work.
So Nickel and Suede is legit. This isn't like a kiosk at the mall. No,
in fact, it's funny because Jenner just explained to me how she got started. She didn't have any earrings that she liked for like whatever outfit she was wearing. So she just went and cut out like 2 pieces of leather in a teardrop shape and attached earring things to them and got a whole bunch of compliments on them. And where did you get those? And so she's kind of just started making them, and it all went from there.
So it's just leather and metal jewelry, or is there now like leather apparel?
There's probably other stuff too, but like,
can I get chaps with nickel?
That sounds like a bit of a robo-crotch butt.
Robo-crotch. That's our mascot. And we got to come up with a good drawing for robo-crotch. Put that on a shirt.
I don't think we want that on a shirt.
All right, Matt. Tell us your story.
Story time. All right, so this was a couple months ago. I had gone to this Thai restaurant that we go to a lot just to get like pickup, and it's kind of a weird setup in the restaurant because you have to go kind of like just basically like the register's like in the dining area kind of, so it's like this tight little spot, like you order and then there's really nowhere to sit except for like right next to the cash register. So
this isn't the place you took us a long time ago?
No.
Okay.
No, this is Nam Thai. I think we went to Thai Stellar.
Sounds delicious.
So, like, I'm sitting there, like, at this awkward angle, because anybody else that comes up and orders, I'm like a foot and a half from them facing their side, because I'm on this like bar stool just waiting. So I'm trying to just like be on my phone and not be awkward. And so this guy comes in, kind of looks like maybe he just woke up. I don't know. Clearly his day off. I'll say that.
Right.
And he goes up and like I can tell he's like frustrated, but it's weird because the interaction that happened after this kind of made me wonder what he was frustrated about until the end. But so he goes up and he's like, "Hey, we ordered food here last night. I think that got delivered, or maybe they picked it up or something. They didn't eat there." But he's like, "It was wrong. You know, like we got like shrimp instead of chicken. And then there was a hair in the food." And so the lady like immediately kind of goes into like, okay, how can I comp you mode, I think, in her mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he keeps saying like this is the weird part. He's like, I don't want anything. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Right. And she's like, okay, so we'll give you more food. And he's like, oh, he's just getting more and more frustrated. Like, no, I don't want anything. I just want to like bring it to your attention so that whoever was working last night, you can just talk to them and let them know, like, you know, and they keep going back and forth. And then she's like, okay, I'll go get my manager so we can give you more food, basically. So she goes back and like the whole time they're having this talk, you know, it's like, I think it was a Friday. So yeah, it was a Friday night. And like, I'm, you know, I've been doing therapy all week. So I don't want to facilitate any sort of communication between these two people, but I'm right in the middle of it. And like, and I'm also like, but the therapist part of me is like, man, I think they're just misunderstanding each other. I think if I just helped her see like all he's doing is just trying to bring this to your attention, but then ask him like, well, why are you still here? You already said what you had to say. Like so anyway, she walks away and he's like, oh, and then I'm just close enough that he just starts talking to me. And he's like, I didn't even want to do this, man. I'm like, well, okay. He's like, my wife made me come do this. He's like, so I was just talking to him and he's like, yeah, man, like last night it was just like we were both too tired to do anything about it, but she was like, well, tomorrow it's your day off and you're going to go in and talk to them. And he's like, why? What do we get? Why? Like I think they called and tried to, but it didn't really get through somehow. And so he's like, you know, they both were like, we don't want our money back, you know, but you need, like, she's like, I'm working tomorrow, you're off, you need to go in and talk to them. And he's like, oh, like, why am I doing this? And so basically they both work in the food industry. So maybe there was some extra level of perturbedness by this delivery. And so, but basically he ended like, okay, so my choices were come here and do this stupid thing, which is now turning out to be exactly what I didn't want it to be. Now she's going to give me more food. I don't want more food. I just wanted to bring this to her attention. I didn't even want to bring it to her attention. Or my wife can be really mad that I didn't go, right? And I was like, I was just empathizing, like, that sucks, man. And so he gets his stuff and we're walking out, and like right before we get into our cars, I'm like, by the way, I'm a marriage and family therapist. He's like, oh my gosh. So I'm just curious, like just.
I like the way you like jabbed that part in at the end. By the way, I'm a marriage family therapist.
Well, I wasn't even going to bring it up because I'm like, I don't want to get into this on a Friday night with somebody and like have him ask me a bunch of questions. But I also just wanted him to know, like, you know, you're getting some validation from a real therapist about this difficult issue. And so I'm just curious, like, I was gonna have like a set of questions about this, but then my tire blew out and I've been dealing with that. So so
Great.
like when you hear that though, maybe just kind of like, what are your first reactions when you hear that story?
How come all the cool stuff happens to you?
Oh, how's that cool stuff? Hold on a quick.
Dude, that kind of thing never happens to me.
Apparently, you just have to sit in a real close proximity to people when they're having issues at restaurants. You'll have plenty of opportunities to have experiences like this.
Well, I'm back now. I'll tell you my initial thoughts. I actually thought something like Mike thought, which at first was like, well, how come that cool stuff happens? Which is funny. I realize stuff like that happens when you're willing to like go to a waiting room, for example, and not sit on your phone. Like if you're willing to go and just kind of be open to like, I don't know, like if I was a comedian, I got to get material. So I find the material and the weird interactions that happen. If I'm staring at my phone, I'm not going to find it.
Yeah.
So plus
I was trying my hardest to stare on my phone or stare at my phone.
Sounds like it was to sit on my phone. Sounds like it was thrust upon you. So I have a couple of thoughts. One about the dynamic between this husband and wife / the restaurateur. But then another one just about the idea of being I guess the therapist in this situation. Like I've driven or walked past people where they're fighting, like sometimes very intensely. I've even one time going the opposite direction, I drove past the car where I watched a woman like kind of slap punch a man in the face. Like I was like, whoa. Like I was kind of like, where can I flip around and follow this car and be like, hey, I'm a therapist, knock it off. But when I watch people like fighting, sometimes I will intentionally, I'm sure it's like, who the crap is this guy? Like I will intentionally kind of walk slowly and look over and, you know, like if, especially in a situation where it looks to me like a female's in, like, is this a safety thing that's happening? Like, do I need to pay attention to this sort of thing? But generally speaking, I actually feel like when you mentioned your marriage and family therapist, I think I would not have dropped that information. Only because I worry that it feels self-serving. Like at the end, I'm like, I'm a marriage and family therapist. Here's my card. Why don't you guys come on in? No. It's like an ambulance chaser.
Yeah.
But
no, I said it more because I had validated his concerns about feeling pressured to go do something that he, like just the stuckness of his situation.
Yeah, you're not just some rando.
And I think it was more like an added, like, I've seen this before and I feel for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually, in that context, I can say there's been at least one time where I've said to somebody, like, actually, I'm a therapist and I see this a lot. So this is not abnormal.
Right. You're not alone in
this. And it's not just some random guy saying, hey, it happens to everybody. It's me saying, don't worry, statistically speaking, this happens to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you're asking what are our thoughts about your reactions or our thoughts about.
I'm more curious about them. Again, and I didn't meet her, but
right.
the dynamic that had ensued between him and his wife that led to him being there.
Yeah.
Not his interactions with the person at the restaurant, because I feel like that's just,
Well, it cracks me up because I'm thinking, in my mind, actually, the first thing I thought was, why would I turn down free food? Like, I'm here to make you aware of this.
Well, I think that was the interesting part, right? Was I think he felt like
by taking the free food,
like this is I'm in the restaurant industry. I know these things happen.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm not just here trying to be the client or the
I don't want to get something out of you. I just want to help you improve your process.
Yeah.
Kind of
somehow Yeah, somehow by taking the free food, you could somehow delegitimize his claim, right?
Yeah.
Right. He's just complaining because he wants free food.
Yeah, he wants a free meal.
Yeah.
But when my first thought was how often that happens where it's like, I mean, I didn't really have a choice. I just kind of had to be here. Like, no matter which way I do this, it's going to work out poor for me. Because if I go back and I say, I told them, but they just didn't care. They kept, she'd be like, you didn't do this right. Like, did you tell them this? And then like, he's going to go home and be like, still doesn't work out for me. And I've had, I just had a lengthy discussion 2 times in a row. Not today. Although
Look
it was
at
yesterday.
you branching out.
Hey, not this morning.
Yesterday. It was yesterday.
You work days other than Wednesday.
I know. You have more than one client. About this idea of like, sometimes you just need to like speak up for yourself. Like, like in this situation, I think, so if his wife has an issue, then it's like, hey, if you have an issue, then go voice your issue. I don't have an issue. Well, then I'm not going to voice it. Then you sound like a jerk, though, where it's like you're going to make her go down and do it. It's like, no,
or you're not siding with me, or
yeah. That happens a lot when it comes to like family dynamics.
Yeah,
And this comes up a lot in session where it's like the husband has figured out how to work with his own family. I know how to navigate through this to create the least blowback. And then the wife, for example, you could flip this direction, but the wife will come in and she's like, your family does this and this, and you need to speak up to your mom about this. And it's like, do I? It sounds like you have an issue with my mom. Why don't you bring this up with my mom? Like I tell people, they don't like when I tell them this. So I think if you have an issue, you should be bringing it up. Don't say to somebody else, I have an issue. I need you to go bring this up for me. Which sounds like this wife had an issue and she's like, go bring it up. And I feel like, don't do that to the guy.
But what if, and like, there's obviously no way to know.
Oh, Mike.
What if he actually is the one who had the issue? And she sat and pushed and was like, then go say something to them. Well, but I'm not trying to get free food.
Mike,
I know, but if you have an issue, go say something. What?
Mike, this is a show for men, dude. Don't start taking women's side in this. I mean, men, we have it really hard.
Sorry, my bad. It won't happen again.
That's true. That is possible. And in that context, it's the same answer either way. If you have an issue, you go take care of it. But it sounds like the way you told the story, Matt, he's like, I don't really even care that much. She does, though.
Yeah, I don't think he had. Yeah, I think
the fight.
Right, that it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, in the end,
it's interesting though too, because like the idea of being able to speak up for yourself and say, well, I don't really have an issue, so you go. Like, I think sometimes in relationships, the partner who already has a hard time standing up for themselves, right? Also just kind of takes what they're given and they're happy with it. So in this case, like, I'm not saying that this was the only motivation here, but to what you're saying, Mike, I kind of wonder too, like, when they got the order, were they both like, oh man, this is what we ordered? And then he was maybe the first one to say like, well, it is what it is, whatever. Right. And he ate it.
Yeah.
And then for her, that's like, okay, that makes me anxious because you're too weak to stand up for yourself about this. Yeah. Are you going to be able to be there for me? So I'm going to make you go take this issue that really isn't an issue for you. Because sometimes I think it's like, sometimes there are situations where, you're like, yeah, I really don't care. I think in this one, he legitimately did not care about the food. He ate it probably. Right. But I think there are other situations where we lie to ourselves and tell ourselves, no, it doesn't matter. But really what we're saying is I'm too afraid to bring that issue up. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't spend a ton of time talking it through, but it just got me thinking a lot about it.
Well, and this is, I mean, it's an interesting concept, the idea that, because what I was saying with one of my clients was that I use the analogy of like, look, let's say that he was saying his wife gets really passionate about things. He's like, and she's really passionate. I don't really care either way. So whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I understand not caring, like not being passionate, but by doing this, like, so whatever, we just did her thing. The more that happens, if your wife is passionate about things all the time and you're always just deferring to her, then the pattern starts to develop that you that she will always be the one making these decisions. So we use the analogy of like, if she really, actually it was Thai food. I said, if she really wants Thai food and you want Subway, but you really don't care. It's not you're like, oh, Subway is my favorite, but you're just like, I mean, I'd rather have Subway, but whatever, I can eat whatever. I said, just that little thing, just say, I want Subway. Because why not? And if she's like, I hate Subway, it's like, okay, you don't have to eat Subway. I'll go get Subway and I'll meet you at Thai Spoon. That's my favorite Thai restaurant. It's so good. And they
Good
never
example,
have hair in their
although
food.
objectively in this situation, he's wrong because Subway sucks.
Oh,
But
well, we
keep
actually
going.
talked about that too. We talked about that. I told him, I said, the only reason I'm using those two is because they're both in the same parking lot near my house. But I think it happened again with a different couple where one person said essentially, this will never happen in my house. I will never allow this. And I said, sure, that's great. What happens when he says, well, I will never allow the opposite? You know, like, I'm not going to do this. It's like, how do you, like, you need to be able to say, hey, this is my preference. Like maybe in this context with this guy, maybe Mike, you could totally be right that it was his issue. And Matt, like what you're saying is like, whatever, it's not worth the fight. So I'll just eat this and be miserable about it. And she's saying, dude, just go freaking speak up for yourself. Because she's a little bit like annoyed, like you never speak up for yourself. And that's driving me nuts. And so she's really saying, go do this because I'm tired of you not telling me when I can tell you're mad at me.
Yeah.
But it's also
my sense
possible,
was, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's also possible that I don't remember what I was going to say. So Matt, you tell me yours.
No, I think there are for sure situations like that. That's why I was thinking of that before. Like maybe it's like maybe it was like you're saying, Mike, maybe it was his issue, or maybe there's just this underlying thing where it's like, I don't feel secure in our relationship because I don't feel like you can step up. And like, there's all this, I don't get way into like the feminine, masculine energy stuff, but a lot of those people say like, in this case, the woman is having to embody the masculine much more, and she wants to be in her femininity. So go talk to them about this food, right? That's one way of looking at it, right? Sure. But I also think there are lots of situations where kind of the in-law thing you're talking about, where somebody's like, no, this is what needs to happen, and you're my employee. Go, do my bidding, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't, you'll be punished. And I feel like those are really difficult. That's more the feeling I got as I kind of like,
yeah, that's the way you described it.
Vented to me, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what I left feeling, but
yeah.
And I brought up what I brought up mostly for the sake of the argument.
You always do.
Listening to it. I know, you're welcome. My thought as I was listening to it was, I think every one of us has been in that situation where we feel like as a husband, she's upset and saying, go talk to them. And so I guess this is what I'm supposed to do as a husband. I don't care. It's not that big of a deal. But I guess this is what I'm supposed to go do. And so we fall into this, right? The mentality of, this is my husband job.
And if you don't do it, you're a bad husband.
Right. You're not, like I was talking with this about this with a guy today.
Today? See? I'm not the only one who does it.
Right. Just about this idea of like, here's this one job you're supposed to have as your husband is to help your wife figure things out and manage whatever stuff comes, and here you are, and you like, clearly nothing you're doing is working, so you're failing at your one job. And he goes, I mean, kinda. And I was like, yeah, because, right, like the number of times Jenna and I have had conversations where I'm like, I don't know what to do to help you anymore. And the only reason I feel like, honestly, she probably just needs me to sit and listen and say, wow, I'm really sorry, Jenna, that sucks. But there's that part of me that feels like, no, as a husband, my job is, okay, well, how do I make this better for you?
Because sometimes that is your job. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not as often as we think it is. And so that's cute. So it leaves us with this weird, like, like I'm failing at this job that I have. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, to me, I thought, yeah, the guy's probably just not wanting to screw up his job. My
Mm-hmm.
job is to support my wife no matter what. If she wants me to go
But that's
complain, even if I think it's dumb, I'm going to go complain.
that's
Mhm.
part of what I wanted to get into with this client is saying that's even actually, Matt, going back to this feminine masculine energy thing. It's really annoying because it does make it sound like the feeling of being taken care of is feminine,
Mhm.
and the feeling of taking care of something is masculine.
Mhm.
And so it makes it feel like, well, I can't feel the need to be taken care of because that's not masculine.
Yeah.
Or if I assert myself to speak up for myself, then I'm not being feminine anymore. And it perpetuates narratives that I think, well, that's not a good narrative. So even this narrative of like, it is my job to take care of my wife's problems. I think I've told you guys before about an interaction I watched with my wife and somebody who will remain unnamed because I don't know who listens to the podcast.
Was it me?
It was my
That's
brother.
what everybody's
We'll
going to think. Was
we'll
it
call
me?
him Reichel. But watching this person totally mistreat my wife in ways that infuriated me. Like
That
I
wasn't
was,
me.
oh, wasn't it, Mike?
Nope, that wasn't me.
You probably know what I'm talking about. But I remember thinking it was something I observed. I was not a part of this, and it was very hard for me to decide. It matters to me that my wife resolves this with this person so that they can change the dynamic of their relationship. I want my wife to feel like she can go and change that dynamic. I don't want her to think, I need Rob to help me change this dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's with my client where I'm saying, when he's like, dude, I really don't care if I like, most of the time I just don't care enough. And I think I'm not telling you that you have to be passionate. I'm just telling you, speak up for your preference. Even if in the end you said, yeah, let's go to your place. Or if you said, no, I understand if you don't want to eat mine, but I'm still getting Subway, and I'll meet you over there. Because it does something for the relationship to say, well, I do have a preference. I think I meet so many men, and this is the nice guy syndrome we've talked about, where it's like you reach a point where you can't even I'm like, well, what's your preference? It's like, I literally don't know. Like maybe this guy in the end, you could be right, Matt, or I could see a scenario where he's like, because to me, honestly, maybe it's because I lived in the Philippines for a while and you found everything in your food. Like one time when I was eating this food, they're like, dude, there's a bunch of ants in it. I was like, oh, I thought that was pepper. I was like, oh, well, and I just ate it. and like, did I feel like it's a hair in my food? I'll just pull it out as long as it's not. The only gross part is when it's in my mouth. Like I'll just pull it out and throw. I've had flies land on my food. In the Philippines, you just brush them off. You keep eating. Like,
Yeah.
And so it feels like, yeah, honestly, most stuff I've learned to just let roll off my back. I don't really care. But I do think it matters from a systemic pattern dynamic in couples to be able to say, I do have a preference and this is what it is. Because sometimes if you never do, when it comes time to actually when you do feel passionate about something, it's like too late, man. You've cut yourself off at the knees so many times that you've got nothing to stand on anymore. And you're going to try so hard, you're going to cram it down their throat. It's not going to go well.
Well, and it's so one. There's a song lyric that keeps running through my head. I don't even know the name of the song, but the lyric is, "Your way has been our way for just one too many times, and now it's been so long that I've forgotten mine." And I think, yeah, it's pretty accurate. Like, I don't, like I've done the thing you want to do so long, I don't even know what my thing is anymore. Because I just let you dictate. And it's funny how much weight we give to passion. Where I think, no, half the time that's just a personality thing. Half the time, like, there are things I sound passionate about. It's my delivery. I don't actually care. When I talk, I tend to sound passionate about things.
Maybe,
and
but
so, but what?
Ahead. Well, People, I can't take myself. I just love this hat so much. I always feel like toot toot, especially when it's pushing my ears down. But people say that, and I think, why are you getting passionate about this? If you really don't care,
Right.
I don't
but
think you're going to
that's
get passionate.
no, but that's my point is I don't necessarily feel the passion someone else hears.
Because you've learned to not pay attention to that passion?
Because it's just my delivery. It's how I talk.
Well, let me ask you this real quick.
Okay.
In the light of
Rob's
Mike's
hat.
personality.
Oh.
Because, well, sometimes I think, like you've said, I feel like what I say isn't going to matter, right? It's going to be dumb. No one's going to take it seriously. And I think sometimes as a defense, when we feel that way, things might come out. I would maybe instead of passionately, I'd say more emphatically, right? Because it's like, it takes some energy it's your breath at the beginning of, or at the end of the welcome, right? Like, is it more of like there's some anxiety about saying it, so I'm going to say it kind of in a strong way.
Right. But even that's partly what I mean when I say you do care in some way. Now, even if like I would, maybe this is not the right way to say it, but like if you're getting super emphatic in a conversation about a topic, you're like, oh, I don't really actually care. I think, are you nervous that people aren't going to like what you're saying? Are you nervous it's going to go wrong? Like there's something behind this more than just.
But it's not tied to the thing you're talking about, is your point, right?
That's my point.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's not other things that push it. Like when I had to speak in church a month ago, and I stood up and was like, hi friends, and I was like, oh holy crap, that was loud, like, but I realized like, I had a lot of nerves, right? Like it was kind of uncharacteristic for me to be that nervous, but that's kind of where I was, where sure there's reasons. There was, like I could easily pinpoint in that situation why I was speaking with such emphasis. Or, I guess that's the word.
Emphasis.
But I think there's times where that kind of nerve and emotion can get mistaken as passion. And my whole point was, I think it's just interesting how much weight we tend to give to someone who speaks with passion.
Well, riff off of that, because I think that's where I was like 5 or 6 minutes ago, because I wondered about this, because Gottman's research shows that one of the bigger predictors of how things go in relationships is the amount of influence the husband gives the wife in the relationship, right? Does that make sense? Like, how much influence does the woman feel like what she says matters, right? It's kind of the classic, and this happens both ways, but it's the classic, like, your wife's been telling you for 10 years to go to the doctor, and you're like, yeah, whatever. And then like your friend's like, hey dude, man, I just had a colonoscopy, and like, you should probably get one. He's like, oh yeah. And he goes and gets one. And he's like, what? So I think there's something very true about, probably for women in a relationship, needing to feel like, I need to make sure that I have influence in our relationship about the important things. But like, to your point, did I get really emphatic and passionate about the shrimp and the hair and the food? And like, because those are easier ones. If you don't take me seriously there, then whatever, I'll be mad at you, but like, it's not going to be a deal breaker. So we tend to kind of avoid vulnerability about the bigger things and go towards these smaller topics. But for the man in that situation, how many small topics is he having to get on board with, thinking, oh, I guess she really cares about this and I should take it seriously? So he's trying to allow influence in a way, but like resentful about it and begrudging about it. And to our point before, where it's like, if he goes, he's a good husband. If he doesn't, he's a bad husband. I think we're all saying, if you go begrudgingly, you're a bad husband. And if you don't go, and you don't speak up and you're resentful, you're a bad husband. What's a good husband? What does a good husband do in a situation like this? Right? What do you guys think?
That's to me the part that I feel like, I guess a good husband, I don't even think it's a good or bad husband to go or not go. Even if he went and said, I don't really care, but I came down. If he goes down and he's like, it wasn't a big issue for me, but it was my wife, and she was busy today, or she has some, whatever about talking to people up front and confronting. It's like, okay. But if it's the idea of like, I don't even want to do this, like, and he's building this quiet resentment of her of like, ugh. I think though a good husband says, and I think too many men leave this out, just says, well, this is my preference. Like if she's like, well, don't you think we should go talk to him? To be like, no, I don't really think we need to.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of men will do that, but they do it in ways it's like, no, you're making a big deal out of this. It's like, you don't need to say it like that. Like,
Right, because
just like the Subway Thai food thing. Like to be able to say, I mean, no, my preference is Subway, but I don't need to eat it. It's fine. I think it matters as a first step, at least. Say what you want.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I guess,
like in a way that invites more of a collaborative conversation. You're saying, not like,
yes,
your preference is wrong. Here's mine.
Right.
It's
right, but it's saying I'm
if
bringing
you really
something
want to know mine, here's mine.
Yeah, and specifically, I think it's important that I also bring something to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Too many men show up and they think the good husband thing to do is just defer to your wife, and then they just stop even bringing things to the table. I think a good husband says, I'm bringing mine to the table. We may not pick it, and that's okay. But I also think sometimes it's important to say, no, we need to pick mine. It has to be Subway. I need some processed bread in my life.
And side note, you just came up with another killer band name, Subway Thai
Processed
Food.
bread? Oh, Subway Thai Food. So I tell you, before we get to Mike's response, because I want to hear it, but I want to tell you guys, my kids have...
Uh-oh.
I hope you guys are still there.
Hey, AI, technical difficulties.
Both frozen. Okay, there you go. So I was going to say, my kids and I are doing a cover. We're just doing cover songs together. I bought a bass for my birthday. A slap of the bass.
Oh, happy birthday.
And my
What'd you get?
Just a Fender Squire.
Nice.
It hasn't showed up yet because UPS is dumb and Amazon's dumb or somebody's dumb. But I was telling my wife, I was like, I'm not spending a bunch of money on a bass. No one cares about the bass player. But they named our band Driving in Suits.
Nice.
I told them we should name it. Someone made a shirt that is a Jackbox game. Make a T-shirt and it said Hilter with a frowny face on it. And I was like, let's name ourselves Hilter. But that sounds like we're a metal band.
That's a little too close to something else.
And that one. All right, Mike. What's a good husband then? And actually, I can't shut myself up. When you said he's not a good husband who does this, he's not a good husband who does this, I think, no, it is a good human. I don't think
right.
It's
I'm not objectively saying good or bad, but I think according to the rules that we operate by oftentimes, I think people do kind of, and probably people have been told that, a good husband would go do this, right? Or you're a bad husband because you didn't do this, right? But what we're saying is like, maybe both of those extremes aren't good, right? Maybe like something in the middle that most of us, not just men, but most of us have very little experience with. Like that's just honestly speaking up.
Yes.
Like one of the things that I try to help people do a lot when they're kind of stepping into this middle ground, especially relationally, is not even state a preference, but just tolerate first the discomfort and disappointment that comes when someone says something really emphatically and your response is, that's interesting, I disagree. And just sitting with that, right?
Yeah.
It's a really uncomfortable thing because we just don't do it, right? And I think like those muscles, like you said, haven't ever been worked. But if being in a healthy situation means I can do that when I need to. But anyway, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Well, it's interesting, right? Like, because now I'm chasing in my head this idea of why we are emphatic when we do things, and it's funny because before I chalked it up to my delivery mat, but then when you brought up the whole like you worry that you're not going to be listened to or that people are going to think you're whatever, like all of my insecurities that we've talked about before, and I think, oh no, that actually probably does drive a lot of the times when I speak more emphatically, because I think, well, if I don't, they're just going to ignore me. Mm-hmm. Right? Like nothing I'm going to say is going to make a difference. And so like, I think an interesting thing, like if that's you or if that's your wife, I think there's an interesting conversation to be had there. of, hey, do you really feel that strongly about this? Or is it that you think I don't listen to you often enough?
Yeah.
Like, what's
Mhm.
driving your emphasis here? Like, why is this so important to you? Your emphaticness?
Your
Emphaticity.
emphasis.
Right? Why is that? Why is this thing so important to you? Which, right, we talk about that a lot, just trying to understand. It's not about being right or wrong, it's about trying to understand. So if it's a big deal to your wife, try to understand it. And I do think, actually, Rob, like I spend a lot of time with clients saying, hey, look, you can state what you want.
Right.
Like, your spouse is under no obligation to do it.
Right.
Like, all day long, like, if you want to, you saying, hey, I want to have sex tonight, that doesn't mean you're having sex, but at least now she knows that that's where your head's at.
That's what's interesting is I think because we decide because we've said it,
Right.
now this should happen. And that's why I'm saying
Mhm.
just bring stuff to the table.
Well, and that's the interesting thing about the whole passionate speaking is we tend, like, oh, they feel strongly about this, I should probably let them do it.
Right.
And I think no, I think it's important to understand why. What's driving it? Is this something you really feel strongly about? Like, if you feel that strongly about Subway, we'll eat Subway every other week if that's what you need.
Right. Which is probably not, right? It's probably I feel
Right.
strongly that I get to speak up, and that's coming out
Yeah.
like I'm forcing Subway down your throat.
Right.
Mhm.
Here's this area where I feel like I'm finally taking a stand. Where I feel like I'm done always deferring to the thing you want. And I'm going to start pushing and acknowledging what my thing is. But it's like, I mean, I still struggle to do it sometimes. To simply say to Jenna, like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. We've gotten, like, the food thing, we've gotten a lot better. Like, just yesterday, she's like, I want Panda. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go eat Panda. And I'm like, but there's a Wendy's next door. Like, I'll eat that.
Isn't that
And we
weird,
can
man?
sit
Not-
in one of the restaurants and eat it together.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were saying that, it just, I think, like the internal conflict that goes on in a situation like this, like as I've tried to just say, kind of a lot more clearly exactly what I want or don't want, especially when
Mhm.
someone's trying to help or things like that. And I think that's part of, now that I think back, that's part of what was going on for me, listening to this guy. And you could reflect this back into their couple dynamic, like we have thought through maybe some of the nuances of that, right, that we don't know about. But like again, there was a language barrier a bit, right? Probably a cultural barrier playing into some of the misunderstandings I think he and the person working the counter were having. But like listening to the way he was saying, I don't want food. It just, like it was almost like, I don't know, I'd have to ask him, right? But you could look at that as how comfortable is that person with their own preferences, right? Is it okay to not want food in a situation like that, right?
Yeah.
Is he nervous that the fact that he's bringing it up is putting an imposition on somebody else and they're feeling like, oh, I have to just compulsively give you something to make this right, and I think sometimes, like, it takes a rare conversation to have somebody say, well, tell me what you really want, right? And we're working through all of our like guilt and rules and what ifs, and it's like, well, it's okay. And then working through next, probably like the probability that if I actually tell you what I want, is it even going to happen, or am I going to fall flat on my face? Like, it's like all these layers. And I think I really admire people that it's a very like approachable and I would even say polite way, can say, yeah, I don't need that, but I do need this. So actually thinking, like, I just thought of an example. East Coast people are like really good at this, right? So I remember being at the hospital where my daughters have their surgeries, and we were waiting in like the cast room for something like a brace or something. And our nurse came in, and she's just, you just know whatever she says is exactly what she means, right? So she comes in, and there's like this group of nurses that are having a little birthday party. Like, hey, we have some cake. Do you want some? She's like, no, I don't, but I do need this. Like, and just kind of like, you know, I think for a lot of people, I'd be like, oh, geez, sorry, I was just trying to give you a piece of cake, right? But she doesn't feel bad about the fact that I don't want cake, and everybody's like, that's an okay option too, right? Even if I offer it to you, it's fine for you to say no. But I think, and that makes me wonder, what I've had theories about maybe why East Coast people have an easier time with that, and I don't know if it's just like closer proximity and just having to be direct because there's a lot of danger in a big city and all this stuff, you know. Maybe farm people are the same. I've heard people say, like, if I grew up on a farm, we didn't get our feelings hurt because we just said, hey, don't touch that, it's going to chop your hand off, right? Or something, right? But yeah, like cultivating that level of maturity in a relationship is super refreshing, right? Because even if he's saying, yeah, I don't want to go do that on my day off, if you want to talk to them, go for it. And even if she's really upset by that, and he is really uncomfortable because she's upset, but they're able to just kind of tolerate that, you know. And I don't think that there's any reaching towards the middle. I think that's sometimes what people think is, oh, well, if I just say this, what are we, just two individuals living our own lives? Right. And that's not good either, right? But I think, you know, there's probably some sort of facilitation of shared interests when it's okay to just have the preferences you have, right? Like when someone says, yeah, what you want is a perfectly fine thing. And then usually, well, yeah, I see your point too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I think just say your preference. Nothing has to, like what you're saying, Mike, nothing has to happen with it. You may or may not get it. And you can handle that like an adult if you don't get your preference. But I also think when you don't do that, it does unintentionally create a long-term problem where by default, your preference, if there is one, is actually wrong, probably. And I do want to clarify.
Stated, yeah.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify too, Matt, like when you're saying, no, I don't really want to do that on my day off, so I'm not going to. I think that's different. To be able to say my preference is this, and in a situation like that where, let's say, like you're mad at my mother-in-law, it's like, no, I think you need to go talk to my mom, you know, like that's different than saying, you know, if your spouse is like, hey, you really hurt my feelings when you said that, and be like, well, I don't really care. I don't really want to do anything about that. Like, that's my preference that's different than saying, well, I have a preference here, and I think it's okay to state that preference. And no, I don't really want to go do this for you. I guess I'm kind of trying to clarify, like, you don't get to be just a jerk and then say, well, it's not my preference to apologize, so I'm not going to. I feel like, no, look, take responsibility for your stuff. There's a difference in those two things. Right now, we're really just saying, hey, you should be able to speak up for yourself, and not, it's something we said, Matt, that you quoted that guy. We've quoted a couple of times where it's like, basically speak up for yourself, but don't make a big deal out of it. Like, just be able to say, well, this is what I want. But if we don't have it, that's okay. But I at least want you to know, so you don't think I have no opinion whatsoever. And so that we both know that let's get all the information out on the table. But I do think it is fascinating to go all the way back to your story again, how often this happens. I said something to my wife and kid last night about my daughter, about how, you know, like I keep meeting all these couples where it's like the wife will put her foot down and say, no, we're not doing that. And the husband's like, okay. And one woman was saying, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm like, okay, it might build resentment over time, but that's fine. And my daughter goes, I mean, isn't it kind of nice though that that's happening? Whereas before it was always like women just had to do whatever men said. And I was like, well, we don't know how true that. Oh, okay, yeah. Like, and it's not obviously. I don't think it should be that way in either circumstance. It's the
Yeah.
teeter totter or the seesaw thing. It's like, well, just because it was this way, do we have to go the other way? How about we find the
Mhm.
right balance of saying, well, just speak up, just say, no, I don't want that. It's me and my cookie
Mhm.
thing. If there's one cookie left on the plate, I'm not going to watch people cut it into 64ths. I'm just going to eat the cookie. I'll say, does anybody want this cookie? And if nobody says I want the cookie, then I'm like, cool, I'm eating the last cookie.
Is
But I
that as
can't
you're
stand
already
watching-
like mouthing it?
Yeah, does anyone want this cookie?
He's usually holding it when he says, "Hey, does anyone want this?"
Now that you touched it, no.
Want this cookie? I just think, hey, if I want the cookie, I'll eat the cookie. But I hate watching people who want the cookie. And so, well, just take a little bite. Just eat the cookie.
You want the cookie? I got you cookie.
I got you cookie.
Just cutting things into small portions, though.
That works. You
my
did that
my
to us, didn't
brother-in-law,
you?
yeah, he one time, like, I was visiting family and somebody had bought a bunch of donuts, and they had just, like, people had taken some and then they were just kind of sitting, and we kind of knew, like, okay, we gotta get rid of some of this food before everybody takes off, and he's like, check this out, just like cut it into small pieces, it'll be gone in like half an hour. Everybody's like, oh well, I'll just have a bite.
Yeah.
Like,
when it's in small
it
pieces,
just
it's like, okay,
disappears.
I'm not committed to a whole
Yeah.
donut.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that on our recent trip a couple weeks ago. I got donuts and I just started that way. We'll just chop them up.
Just cut them up. Jenna will
That's
do
a good
that
idea.
every once in a while
Yeah.
when she wants.
Genius.
Change happens in small bites,
Yeah.
good and bad.
Just like stating your preference. It's just a small bite.
Those small bites got me back to fat man weight.
Fat man. Well, I guess that means we're done.
Eat the shrimp, eat the hair, don't complain.
That's amazing. Then come back and catch us next time on the Manspace. I like that you like it.